Okay, so again, we just got over talking about how impressions are made very fast from limited information. And again, sometimes that can be useful, but they are very vulnerable to bias, as we talked about. And impressions do influence later processing in our own behavior. So again, we can think back to Jordan. Why was she late? Again, we might jump to she was irresponsible, but again, maybe it was an accident, sick kid, car. Why quiet, unfriendly, nervous, tired, listening? Again, same behavior, very different causes that we really don't know. And so here's the question. The answer to those questions, is it because of who she is, or is it a situation? This is where we get into attribution. Okay. So think about the last time somebody annoyed you. What did you assume their behavior told you about them? How much did you actually know about what was going on in their life or their situation? We're constantly trying to interpret and explain other people's behavior, even when we don't have enough information to actually know what causes that behavior. So, how should we determine what causes people's behavior? So, again, just on the slide here, and we're getting to it. Why might a person behave that way? Is it just because that's who they are, or something caused them to act that way? So, we have a couple of videos here, and I hope they work. We'll see. Fighting triangles and sad lamps. Okay, go ahead and think about that one. We're going to watch one more. Maybe.
And if you feel bad for this lamp, that is because you're crazy. It has no feelings. And the new one is much better. Many of you feel happy for this lamp. That's not crazy. Reusing things is much better.
Okay, so what did you see happening? And also, we could talk about how you feel as well. Okay? And we can talk about like what was each object feeling? What did each one want? Okay, we could even go back to the triangles and the circle. Big triangle seemed very angry. Little triangles scared. Lamp very sad until Lamp was adopted. Then Lamp became very happy. And again, I'm sure there's other things here. But there may have been, you might think of feelings, intentions, and desires, or even a personality associated with these objects. But here's the thing, they are. The gentleman is correct. They're shapes. That was a lamp. A triangle can't be aggressive, and a lamp can't be sad. But it can feel like it was. That's the thing about this. We can feel like these objects had these feelings. Because here's what happened is the brain automatically creates agents. We assign agency to things that may not have agency or be quote unquote biologically alive, so to speak. And as a result of that, they must have intentions and emotions and motivations for things. Okay. And as a result of that, we apply these human experiences to that which is not human. All right, so last class, we talked about how we quickly decide what somebody's like. Today, we're going to talk about how we quickly decide why someone is doing what they're doing. So, if we're going to assume a mind behind the behavior of a lamp, think about how quickly we do it with real people. Okay, we infer or assume what we can't see. So, with the lamp, there were certain movements and a certain tilting of it and things around it, and we assumed that there was sadness. With people, it's the same basic problem. I mean, can we actually see that somebody is angry? Technically, we can see a facial expression, hear a voice, and observe behavior, but anger is still an inference. Same with rudeness, being nervous, arrogant, caring, dishonest. These mental states are actually invisible to us. We put together all of these other cues to make the assumption that this is what this person is experiencing. So these mental states are invisible to us, but we constantly try to read them anyways. And this is useful, okay? We do this for a reason because we are social creatures and this requires that we predict each other's behaviors. We need to know Is somebody safe? Are they trustworthy? Are they upset? What are they about to do? And how should I respond? This did help keep us alive in ancient environments, and it helped us survive in tribes. So that's why we do it. It's just a little bit more complex now. And so, because here's the thing, assumptions or inferences, they're not facts. We might be right, but we could be completely wrong. These nonverbal cues are nothing more than information. The meaning still requires interpretation. So again, behavior is observable. The meaning is what is going to be inferred. And okay, this is where it gets tricky. And so we're usually trying to work backwards, actually. So stick with me here. Yes, reality moves forward as far as we know. The observer of another human reasons backwards. So, an example, okay? And you can follow along on the slide too, but person has an aggressive disposition. Okay, they're just an aggressive person. Then they do get angry. They want to confront. They yell. Us as an observer, we only see the yelling. Okay? Then we work backward. Did they intend to hurt me? Were they angry? Are they an aggressive person? Many paths can produce the same behavior. The yelling could be anger, fear, maybe it's an emergency, maybe they're excited. Okay? If somebody cries, what caused it? Could it be sadness, joy, pain, frustration? Again, it's the same observable behavior, but there's a lot of different causes. That reverse inference gives us an explanation, but not necessarily the same explanation. So this process, unfortunately, it's uncertain. So we can see the end of the process, and then we try to reconnect it to the cause, but it does, again, it's not foolproof, so to say. Okay, so stick with me here. Let's talk about attribution. So why did they do that? Attribution means causal explanation, explaining the causes of behavior. That's an important concept. Explaining why somebody does what they do. We're attributing a reason for their behavior. When we observe someone, we naturally ask why they did that. And there's two broad possibilities with a lot of gray in between. The person, it's something about them, or the situation, something about what was happening in their world. And when we talk about the person, maybe we're talking about their personality, their ability, their attitudes, their motivations, how hard they're trying, the situation, circumstances, environment, other people, opportunity, pressure. So is what they're doing telling me something about them or the situation? Again, going back to Jordan from the last lecture, being late, was she irresponsible or she an irresponsible person? Or, maybe there was construction or there was a family emergency. Okay, so there's a classic study on this, an analogy, a golf ball. What makes a golf ball roll? Yes, that is a question. I know it's going to be rhetorical here, but um, sorry, we're not to Fido yet. What makes a golf ball roll? Is it something about the ball? Again, the ball itself, because it's round. Or is it something about the situation because it was hit by a club? Okay, what makes it roll? Okay, so again, maybe it's something internal. It's about the ball itself. It's round. Or external. Club, but maybe it's on a hill, maybe it's wind. Or both. And that does go toward human behavior as well, and that behavior usually reflects both the person and the situation in some way, shape, or form. So again, here's a question. Why do some people ace an exam? If we look at the person explanations, they're intelligent. They studied, they're motivated. We look at the situation they're in, maybe it was an easy test. They studied the right questions. They got a tutor. They got sleep. But the thing about this is it's usually an interaction of both. And so here's the thing is we're social psychology, and again, because this is social psychology, if we were studying personality psychology, we'd be talking about different theories. We're in social psychology. So we're not saying that personality doesn't matter, and we're not saying that everything is the situation. We're saying that it is very commonly some sort of gray in between. So what happens here, unfortunately, is we usually don't weigh those two things together when we're interpreting somebody's behavior. We often see the way somebody's behaving, and then we infer the trait very quickly. We don't think about all of the gray. And very commonly, we apply it to who they are, and the situation gets less attention. Now, here's a question. If somebody cuts you off in traffic, what's your first explanation? I can use a lot of choice words. This is not an X-rated lecture, though. So they're a jerk. They're an idiot. My first thought is not, oh my goodness, I wonder what they're going through today. No, that's not what I'm thinking. I'm applying their behavior to who they are as a human, not what situation they're in. Is that unfair of me? Absolutely, but that's immediately what my brain does. We know that behavior has multiple causes. We've talked about it this entire course so far. But our brains still want that quick answer. So if we wanted to make a really careful attribution, what information should we look for? So this takes us to the next slide. Yes. Okay. First and foremost, people are terrible. Why did Joe kick Fido? And I apologize if anybody's name is Joe out there. I do not think that you ever kick dogs, and nobody should ever kick a dog. But this is kind of the study that they used, so I had to do it. But yes, people are horrible. Anybody that kicks a dog is horrible. You are not a human. Okay. But here we go. So, why did Joe kick Fido? And there is a method to the madness. This does get to Kelly's covariation model. But we see Joe kick a dog. Explanation one, Joe is a cruel person. That's absolutely where my brain goes. That's a dispositional attribution. It's dispositional. It is about Joe. It is about him. It's caused by something about Joe. Explanation two, Fido bit Joe. That's situational. The behavior is caused by something about the situation outside of Joe. Same behavior, very different explanation. So, what information would we actually need before we decide Joe is actually an aggressive, awful, cruel person? Okay, maybe things like, okay, does he do this often? Does he do this to other animals? Does he do this to people? What happened before you saw him kick Fido? And these are all things we should ask. Do we? Probably not, but these are things we should. So, this is Harold Kelly's covariation model. And the goal is to determine, okay, was it the person, the situation, or a combination of the two that caused a specific behavior? Now, the thing about this is we need a pattern. We cannot just base the cause of somebody's behavior on one isolated event, according to this model. Okay, so when it comes to distinctiveness, yeah, does this happen in other situations? So is Joe hostile only toward Fido or toward everyone and everything? Consensus. Do other people also react badly to Fido? Like, is Fido, like, does everybody have to kick Fido because Fido is that horrible? God forbid. Or is Joe the only one? Because we saw a picture of Fido, okay? Is adorable. And then consistency. Does the person behave this way repeatedly? Does Joe do this a lot to Fido? Is does Joe chronically abuse Fido? Okay, so we have to look for we have to ask ourselves these or address these three categories and ask these questions in order to determine the cause of the event. Because one behavior tells us much less than a pattern of behavior. It requires comparison. One behavior alone is very weak. Not only is it weak, it's weak evidence specifically about personality. Okay, so let's go ahead and work through this. So, scenario A. All right. All right, let's walk through this and then we can do B2. So, let's say, okay, with distinctiveness. Hi. Okay, Joe is hostile toward Fido. He only behaves this way toward Fido, not other animals. Consensus is high. Other people have had trouble with Fido. And consistency is high. Joe reacts negatively to Fido every time he sees them. So, what's the most likely explanation here? Does this prove Fido is the cause? And the answer, no, it does not prove that. But again, the inference and pattern supports the situational explanation. Again, because maybe Fido does bite and growl and attacks, and it's a terrifying little monster. And so, if this is what comes to fruition, now the judgment of Joe might change because of the context, because of the situation here. The context changes what the behavior means. Okay, let's change the pattern here. Okay, same situation. Not only is okay distinctiveness low, Joe behaves this way across situations and targets. Hostile toward Fido, hostile toward other animals. Other people get along well with Fido. Fido's fine. Joe repeatedly behaves aggressively. Now, this is much stronger evidence for a dispositional cause, and this is about Joe, not the situation. The repeated pattern is a stronger basis for the fact that this is his personality. So the reason this judgment is more defensible than our original Joel is cruel reaction is because now we have multiple observations, we have comparison data, we have context for everything that's happening, and there is a pattern. A trait should describe a pattern, not just one isolated moment. Because personality in and of itself is based upon characteristics across time and space and is fairly stable. Here's the thing, and here's another example. Okay, student sleeps in class one day. All right. It is easy for teachers or instructors to make the assumption they're lazy and they don't care. But here's the thing. Does this always happen? Or is this only one class? Is everybody else exhausted? Am I boring? Could they have worked overnight? Do they have a sick kid at home? Illness? One bad night? Okay, I am not going to attribute that to them at all. They've got something going on at home. Now, if they sleep every day across, I hear from multiple instructors that they're sleeping in every single day. That is going to be stronger evidence that, okay, this does have to do with them. There's not something situational necessarily going on. So Kelly does give us a pretty logical way to make judgments. Okay, there's just one problem here. Okay. And then we'll take a quick break because I recognize I went too long. Kelly's model shows how we could carefully analyze behavior, but in everyday life, again, here's the thing is we don't have the time to sit down and do this in every situation. We see behavior, we form an impression, we make an assumption about what caused it very, very fast. And we rarely have all the information that Kelly's model does require. When somebody cuts you off in traffic, do you conduct that whole analysis that we went through? Absolutely not. I'm immediately going to say that that guy's an idiot, and that's it. Many other careful words are colorful words as well, not appropriate for this, but I'm going to attribute it to who they are as a person. I'm not going to sit down and use this covariation model, even though I probably should, but it's going to take too much time and effort. So the question isn't just how we should explain behavior, it's how we can actually explain it. And this is where it gets really interesting. So this is, I'll give just as much of a cliffhanger as we can do, but researchers created a situation where the cause of somebody's behavior, it was made very obvious. And they told participants, okay, the person had no choice. This is the situation caused the behavior. So the thing is, surely participants would take the situation into account, right? Okie dokie. This is where we're taking a break. Then we'll be right back and we will finish this chapter.